don't think I'll ever forget what did happen. Of course, it was on October 11th of '73. I was employed by F.B. Walker and Son Shipyard at that time, and Calvin was also a friend of mine. Many evenings after work, I'd go fishing on the river when I'd have time. So that day in particular, about noon, Calvin and myself had planned on going fishing that evening after work. And after we had went home and got our tackle, of course, and went down to the river, we tried several places, and we came back up to the old Saltpeter shipyard, and I was sitting on an old pier fishing out into the river. And I don't know whether what really attracted my attention, but I heard a hissing-like sound. And when I turned and looked behind me, there was some kind of craft that was, it was probably 18 inches or a foot off of the ground, just hovering there. And there were two blue lights up toward the front of it, and they were either revolving or pulsating. And I really didn't know what to think. I didn't know what it was. It startled me at first, and I stepped down off of the pier, and I looked around, and well, I saw Calvin step down too, and he was looking at the same thing I was. And about the time we stepped on the ground, there was a door open there in the front, just seemed to appear there, probably a sliding door. And there was a brilliant light that came out of from outside of the craft, just a beam of light. And there was something well, I know now it was robots, but there was something that came into the door. There was three of them, in fact, one behind the other one, and they just seemed to glide out of the door. They never touched the ground, and I didn't know what to do. I'd become quite frightened at that time, and the river's behind us. We couldn't go that way. So, and those things were getting close to us. And when they got up real close to me, I guess I just froze. I don't know, but then they came around, and one of them took hold of this arm, and I felt pain in it just instantly. And one of them took hold of the other arm, and I seemed to just rise up from the ground at the height they were, in more or less a leaning position. So they weren't very tall. I mean, I'm 5'8", and I was a little taller than they were. And about that time, Calvin, he was to my right. I saw one take hold of him, and he just went limp. And I found out later that he had passed out. He had fainted from the fear, I suppose. But anyway, these things, we just went right onto the craft, through that door, into that bright light, went into what was probably the middle of a room or compartment, and it appeared to me that it was round. And the light was glowing from the walls and the overhead and the floor. And we stopped about middle ways of the room, I suppose, and they just released me. I couldn't move anything but my eyes. I could move my eyes. I don't know why I could move them and couldn't move anything else. But anyway, they released me, and a few moments, I suppose it was, but out directly in front of me, something came out of the wall that it appeared to me that just a big, I always refer to it as an eye, a big pupil in an eye. And it moved up in front of my face, and it remained there for a few minutes, moments, I suppose. And it went downward and went under me, and I'm assuming it went up the backside because it came back up over my head, came back in front of me, and it remained there for a few more, probably a minute or two or more. And it moved back into the light in the wall and disappeared. I was still suspended there. I didn't know, there wasn't anything I could do. I just kept thinking, what are they going to do with me? Are they going to take me away? Or I couldn't imagine what they were going to do or what they were doing with me. But anyhow, after a while, these things came back, and they took hold of me, and we seemed to turn there in the room, and we moved back out the doorway, and they moved back to almost the exact spot that they had picked me up from, and they just released me, and I fell to the ground. Well, it was this time that I saw Calvin again, and he was standing there in front of the river with his arms outstretched, and he appeared to me to be going in shock, and I was trying to get up to my feet to make it to him to see if I could help him some way. And I heard that hissing sound again, and I looked behind me, and I saw those blue lights just instantly, and this craft just went away. Well, I made my way on the cabin, and I could get up on my feet by this time, and it took me a while to get him where I could talk to him and assure him that maybe, you know, that we weren't hurt bad, I know, you know, but we really didn't know what they had done to us. At first, we decided we wouldn't tell anyone. We just keep it to ourselves because, you know, I didn't want to be called nut and crazy. Those things are just not supposed to happen. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that we had to tell someone, maybe the military, because, you know, possibly our country could be a threat to our country. So we stopped on the way home, and I called Keesler Air Force Base from a pay phone, and briefly I tried to explain to them what had happened, but they informed me that they didn't handle those things, that we'd have to go through the local sheriff's department. Well, we hesitated there. We didn't want to go through the sheriff's department because, you know, they might just grab us up and take us on to the nut house. But anyway, we talked it over again and decided we would call the sheriff's department, and maybe we could get him to assure us that we wouldn't have any publicity about it. So I called the sheriff's department, and they sent 2 deputies over, which after talking with us, asked us to follow them to the sheriff's department, and we did. And they questioned us there for several hours, and the sheriff assured me that night that we wouldn't have any publicity about it at all. He would try to maybe report it to the proper authorities, whoever the proper authorities were, and it could be investigated. But the next day, when we reached work, my telephone was ringing, and it was some reporter from Jackson, and then all the telephones at the shipyard started ringing, and they were trying to get information about what happened to Charlie Hickson and Calvin Parker that past night in Pascagoula. As a whole, I think the public has been real decent to me. I haven't had any ridicule over all these years. I think that's because I've been honest, and when people wanted to ask me questions about it and talk about it, I took up my time to do it. Sometimes I think maybe I shouldn't have told anyone what happened to me here on this Pascagoula River many years ago. But then again, I realized that I did right by telling what happened. I think most of the people knows where man has been. I think I know where we're going. Maybe someday I can help convince the world to that fact. I know there's other worlds out there with life on it, and someday everyone will know that to be a fact without any doubt.